The next submission is an oral presentation from Ms. Spletstetter. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it properly. As outlined in CMD 15H2.125, 125A, B, and C. The floor is yours.
I realized that I lived 20 years in the secondary zone of the largest nuclear power plant, and I'm not prepared to protect my family in a potential emergency, nuclear emergency. Mr. Binder, commissioners, participants, and interested citizens. My name is Jutta Spletstetter, and Dr. Paul Sekaspina is here with me to give you a brief summary of the telephone poll that his firm conducted last summer for me. First, I would like to highlight my personal findings to you in regards to off-site nuclear emergency preparedness. Everything I'm saying is backed up by documents. The business of nuclear emergency planning is inconsistent, lacks clarity, and is not timely, and is poorly accessible to the public. As you know, we are sitting here in the only assessed evacuation center in our municipality of Kincardine. How many cars and people do you think we could receive here and decontaminate by Bruce Power? Let me tell you that according to the evacuation plan, the Provincial Nuclear Emergency Response Plan, it could be up to 3,829 cars and 9,572 evacuees. When I approached the schools of our children, that I learned, for example, that the high school principal has no dated plan with Bruce Power. Why is the only plan he could show me from the previous operator? The Tiverton Senior Home has no nuclear emergency plan. What are they supposed to do? Our Emergency Management Coordinating Committee, which our current mayor hosted last year, met only once last year, even they're supposed to meet twice a year. Dr. Hazel Lynn, who is present here, is on this committee. The designated supervisory officers of the Blue Water District School Board were not in attendance in the last 2 years. The Kincardine Hospital has only one room to receive people contaminated by radiation. I learned we have movable hospitals since I was here presented, mobile hospitals, which Mr. Skongard turned like. So supposedly there will be tents set up in the parking lot if more space is needed. Move the next one. Taking pictures is not allowed, said Stephanie Murray, emergency drill organizer from Bruce Power, to me last summer. The drill started with checking cars for contamination. A full car of Bruce Power co-op student was guided to the designated decontamination station, only equipped with a shop vac. All of a sudden, there was a 75-minute lunch break. The organizers confirmed to me that the CNSC was not present. And I will now, I'm talk very slow, and I know we run out of time, but I have more that in the question period I could probably say. I want to give some time for our consultant. Sorry.
Great. Thank you very much for having me. I'm Paul Sekaspina, Oracle Poll Research, and I'm here to present the results of a public opinion survey of residents of Bruce County. 500 residents surveyed last July for my client here, last July that is. What we wanted to do was ensure a good mix of seasonal and permanent residents, and we did ensure that by our methodology. We can get into that a little later, but we did get a third of the respondents that were seasonal residents and the remaining permanent residents. We also had a good mix of geographic mix throughout Bruce County. So limited time here, so I'm going to get right to the data. We asked residents about their level of concern over a potential accident. Concern was low. It was only at 17%, which leads me into my first slide. So the low level of concern amongst residents. And I can get into some of the demographics later, male-female split, youth versus older residents. But there's a corresponding lack of readiness when it came to preparedness for a potential nuclear accident, with only 27% of all respondents being prepared. This includes 30% of permanent residents and only 20% of seasonal residents being prepared. We asked people if they've seen or heard anything about planning in the event of a nuclear accident. Low awareness and preparedness, in part, may be a result that only 31% have seen or heard something recently about planning in the event of an accident. And that's 33% for permanent, with, once again, a lower skew towards the seasonal residents at 27%. Awareness of community outreach efforts to educate residents about emergency preparedness in the event of an accident. Only 28% were aware. Once again, have you received any materials about preparedness at this residence? Only 12% had received something. Next question dealt with the level of awareness or understanding of emergency procedures and preparedness in the event of an accident. Skew on this one, in this 1 to 5 scale, 40% being rating their level of preparedness as good or very good, 43% claiming it is poor or very poor, with the remainder in the mushy middle or in the don't know categories. With respect to potassium iodide pills, high level of awareness as to what they're used for, 67%, 2/3 of respondents. Only 2% of the population currently have them on hand at their residence. Next slide shows sources of information, preferred sources of information that residents would like to get information about the issues that we're discussing. Websites come up 37%, followed by radio and television. So the top 3 websites, radio and TV, with websites obviously skewing younger and more seasonal residents. We asked residents, how strongly would you support having a yearly door-to-door canvass of residents in the area to advise them of what to do in an emergency situation? 57%. With an almost equal number of permanent and seasonal residents would support such a campaign. Awareness of issues. So this next table shows what people were aware of it and issues that they're aware of. With the exception of awareness of releasing radioactive materials or that they could be released, 83%. The remaining, the categories we can go through later, are all very low, falling below majority threshold, and the lowest being awareness of location of emergency shelters, only 20%, red pages, only 19%, different emergency notification requirements, 15%. Which leads us into the next slide here, information interest. We asked residents what they'd be interested in receiving. High level of awareness for all of the categories, especially contact information, 87%. Emergency centers, 85%. Decontamination, 85%. In summary, hopefully I haven't gone over here, low level of concern over a potential accident, also a low level of outreach and communications efforts at the moment. Majority of residents are not prepared for a possible accident. While they're aware of the uses of potassium iodide pills, only a low percentage have them on hand. Very few have heard a siren recently, 15% in the last year, and I believe 11% in the last month. There are knowledge gaps as it relates to decontamination, evacuation, shelter locations, notifications. However, most do want to know information about critical information, contacts, evacuation routes, decontamination shelters. Strong support for the door-to-door canvass of residents, and given the poor uptake on what we consider now current passive communications and education processes, perhaps a door-to-door or face-to-face interactive plan would seem to be in order. And I apologize for my misuse of the microphone. Thank you. Thank you.
We have 1 more minute. So, know in my slide deck you will find that I mentioned that the memorandum of agreement from Bruce Power, like from 2011, commits an annual, like Bruce Power commits to an annual drill at the Kincardine Hospital. Why did Bruce Power only conducted one drill in 3 years? And last week, Bruce Power confirmed to me that no annual meeting took place in the agreed time frame. Who will hold Bruce Power accountable to the agreement? And what else is neglected? I think we deserve real answers.
Okay, maybe we'll get some. Question, who is, oh, you got...
If I may, I saw it 20
Oh,
seconds.
sorry.
A citizen just shared with me before I came here, like at lunch. She shared with me she received a letter in the mail that she can get her KI pills, but the coupon was missing.